and welcome to the Mustard Seed Podcast.
Gary, I'm losing track of what appearance this is. 9, 10, I don't know, man. It's great to be back with you.
It's good to be back, and really like working with you. And I always get such positive response from your listeners. So hopefully we'll maintain that level of expectation and hopefully exceed it.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's paying attention, it's definitely gonna, cause the questions to get more serious, a little more thorough, to go deeper.
Yeah.
And we have this suspicion.
Hi, Diane. Good to see you.
The writers of the
Hang
Bible
on.
were aware of many of
Crooked.
the things that you actually talk about. It was a part of the worldview that produced the Bible. So it's kind of becoming awakened within the body of Christ, which is
Hey, guys.
an
Good
honor
to see you,
and
bro.
fascinating to be a part of the journey. Any updates you want to talk about? I think it's been about 6 months since you last were on. You've released part 2, Genesis 6 Conspiracy Part 2.
Yeah.
You have an audio version that dropped.
Yes.
I think last time we talked, it was like 2 weeks out from print.
Yeah, likely. So the book has not been out a year yet, but it's been out for a while, and it looks like it's doing quite well out there. So, and I wanted to touch on, just before I update some of the things I've done this year, because it's kind of relevant, is that it always sort of surprised me that for some reason within the body of the church, at least in the generation that I grew up with, which is getting to be quite long, that there was not the consideration for
Listen to
presenting the
Steve,
context to how not only the disciples in the world that Jesus walked in with us for a short period of time, what was the context of that time? How did the Jewish people look at what was in the Old Testament, what was going on, what their expectations out of the world was, and what were their ancestors' recollections and context? And I always thought that it was odd we wouldn't get into the shoes of the people who wrote down the things for God and the Word of God to pass on to us, so that we would have a better understanding. So when Jesus went to Mount Hermon and changed Peter's name and decided he was going to start to build his church, and why he chose to make that
Stop alarm.
at Mount Hermon, there's no context provided for us as to what's really going on there. And so it's important to understand that. And that's what, I try and do, is get people to dig deeper into the Bible and have a better understanding of that. And so, yes, that was the inspiration for book 2. And I said I wouldn't do a sequel because I didn't want it to be redundant. It's book one's an 800-page book. And so are you just sort of talking about more of the same, or is there relevant information that you could bring to the table? So actually I started another book 2. It will be book 3. And I was kind of struggling with the book, and writing book 2 actually showed me how to write it. So we'll be doing book 3 as I get some more time available. I'm up to about chapter 10, so I'm well into it. So, and
I know one of the cool things that you brought up about like book 2 that we were talking about prior was you listened to what the audience had to say.
Yeah. And that's what convinced me. Slowly. I'm very stiff-necked. And so it took a while to resonate. And it took a while to, even once it resonated, what they were saying is, well, how would I do it without being redundant? So what I heard from the audience is we love book 1. And they got, for the most part, the concept that it was a book about, yes, very Christian-centered, but how the Bible and its history and prophecy intersect into the world. And I use secular dating in book 1, and I'm trying to appeal to non-Christians as well, to give the Bible a look. And so what they
It's just gonna live in AM.
Centered more on the Bible, and by inference,
It's just gonna live in AM, mate.
the Gentile world intersect with the Bible and to go deeper and to apply the kinds of research I was using, but more specifically focused on getting right to biblical sourcing in all cases and going as deep as you can on that so that there's a dive that we can understand the old world much better and how that connects into today and into end time prophecy. So that was quite a challenge. So
Yeah.
and so what I did in book one is where if I was using a reference to a Hebrew,
I thought you were a bit later than that,
I
Di.
didn't go directly to Strong's dictionary or concordance. I used another source because I wanted people to understand that the polytheist side understands these terms as well, and I wanted them to speak in their own voice. So this one goes deeper into the Bible than I think any other book that's out there. It is unique. It is like book one on steroids for Christians. And if you like book one, you're going to really like what it does from a Christian perspective in book two. And if you like Dr. Heiser's work, then this is going to be Dr. Heiser on steroids. And in a way that hasn't been done before. So it is as unique as book one. And is there some overlap? Yes. Only maybe I was trying to keep it to 10% or less and just kind of making maybe a quick reference, putting a footnote and connecting that back to book one, but just sort of bridge the topics. And so it's essentially all new information, but new biblical information and associated outside biblical texts that would support what is written in the Bible and in ways that people haven't looked at before. And so this
Hey,
book brings the Old
Phil.
Testament
Good to
to
see you,
life in
mate.
a way that book one did a good job on, but this goes to a level that just sort of blows people's mind, I think. And so not only do I cover off the angelic hierarchy, both loyal and disloyal in the Old Testament, and I'm going to cover off all the giants listed that I could find in the Bible, and there's way more than people think. And I'm going to take those giants back to a specific tribal patriarch, which is unique. And then I'm going to cover off the difference between giants and hybrid giants, which is humans bearing giants to produce a smaller form of giant. And I'm going to take that back to a Raphaim patriarch. And then in that process, explain why we have 9 patriarchless tribes in the Canaanite listings in the 70 nations, and why you have this odd Genesis 36 accounting of genealogies outside the Table of Nations, and start to make some sense out of all of that. Not that I don't cover that in a certain way in book 2, but not in a way for Christians to say the Bible is written in such a perfect way. You just need to let it tell you its story if you're open to do so, and then to be able to verify those types of things. So, and as I'm doing that, I'm finding important allegorical and contextual words, phrases, passages, concepts to help define end time prophecy. Because there's a premise that we need to sort of do, not only be Berean in our process, in all things that we do, but also if we want to understand prophecy, we have to understand prehistory. So we get this reference for the days of Noah, which is going to be chapter 1 in book 1, or book 2, I mean, and in a way that not been done before because of all the misinformation that people use to try and dismiss that phrase in the 3 accountings in Luke, Mark, and Matthew. But I'm also going to sort of underline this phrase in Ecclesiastes 1, that nothing is new under the sun, and what was will be again. And there's, as you get into verse 17 and 18 on that, it says the understanding.
I'm a time traveler, Lars. I'm from the future for you guys.
Understanding of this wisdom only brings grief and sorrow. It should really make our hair stand up on end if we want to know the end time is going to be, it's going to be like the days of Noah. So anyways, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole there. So anyways, it's totally unique. And then I'm really down a chronology for book, end time chronology, and I'll show you what I use for my disciplines in my approach in the preface. I'll highlight key things, and then I'll use all of that and lay down an end time chronology in the last two sections for people. So it's a totally unique book. So that released in March, the printed copy. Then we started immediately working on an audio version for book 2 that released in September. And then we did an audio version, for book 1 released in September. And then after that, we started to work on the audio version for book 2, and that released in December. So
that's what it was. So the last time you were on, it was the audio that was getting released. I think it was
Yes.
about September of 24.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. All right, well, we're coming a long way, man. And you're hitting the ground running, just giving us a really great overview of the book and what to expect, even with a third writing coming out. I remember when you wrote book 1 and I interviewed you, I think it was like the first time, you were like, yeah, this is it. Enjoy it, world. Now here we are. Here we are. Book 3's in development. Larry,
I underestimated the thirst for information that the
from the
churches are.
people,
Yeah.
which is so important to
Yep.
to check the residency. How is this ripple effect going out? What is it doing? Is there the hunger, the appetite within the
Yep.
body of Christ for it? And that was
Yes.
a very well played part on your hand.
Yep.
Yeah. So, dude, I got some weird questions for you.
You know how it says whether to be hot or cold? I wonder what the cold bit is.
We started out many years ago talking about Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
And we talked about some really interesting things going on there. I do
Yeah.
want a little bit of a recap for some new listeners, but before actually we open that door, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts with these drones, these UAPs that are being reported? It started in
Good
New
question.
Jersey. We're in January of 2025 now. This is, I don't even remember the timelines precisely, but it started in New Jersey. And it kind of moved out to all these other sub pockets, these regions across the country. Now, even across the world with the whole fog thing. That's
That TJW, what is it? TW, yeah. Is that dark looking guy? What's his name?
happened recently.
Yeah.
Just give me your thoughts on that before we get to the nitty and gritty with some of these other questions I have.
Yeah, for my thoughts, it's rather bizarre that you would permit these things to stay up in the sky and over military bases, and that you've got 4 or 5 departments that have the authority to take them down. And they have supposedly the means to bring them down if they're just drones, UAPs, even if they're a little bit more advanced. So unless they're so far advanced they can't bring them down, it doesn't make sense to let that go on. Although you could look at the incompetence of the last administration in all sort of aspects and say, but you have states involved, you have other organizations, you have too many things involved to sort of let this go on. So my sort of thought on it is that this is like a series of things that's preparation. And so either the government is wanting this to go on or they can't take it down. But all of it is preparation. And as we get releases from the
I reckon they're on purpose.
Congress on the new buzzword UAPs versus UFOs, they're shaping the conversation kind of with that, and they're shaping it with the stingy information that they provide, that they recognize they don't know where these are, but they don't want to go anywhere else with that conversation. There's just these mysterious things you don't have to worry about. We can't quite figure them out, but they couldn't really be dangerous, could they? How stupid do they think we are? Well, they think we're incredibly stupid, and they have a long record and
Let's be honest, people are inherently stupid.
resume to back up that statement. And that's just because we've allowed them to lie to us continually. And I think that is wearing thinner as we go. And hopefully more and more people are waking up to ask good critical questions that you have been brainwashed and prepared not to. You're prepared to accept the explanations even when they do not make any sense. And that's part of it. And everybody says, well, you go to university to get critical thinking. Maybe it used to be that way at some point in time, but it's not that way anymore. You're there to lose your critical thinking. And so they want a world that just accepts the nonsense that they're providing for us, in my opinion, and that will make things easier for the next steps.
So, I mean, it triggers for me like the veil. You know, I have this idea of the veil thinning. You know, I look at biblically kind of some of the ideas that are given theologically, New Testament, Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, you know, talking about the tabernacle. You know, we have Moses veiling his face from spending time with the Lord. But then the veil that is, you know, this kind of physical, in a way, physical, and this quantum barrier that separates some of the operations of behind the scenes entities from, you know, the hard, tangible, physical realm that we're all very familiar with on this side. And there's some weird stuff going on there. So I really like what you said about the overview of the drone stuff. I do think that this generation is a bit different. I think, I think there's a lot written prophetically about this generation, Gary, that a lot of people would miss just from maybe being in the Bible Belt, not having, you know, such an in-depth hunger to understand what's going on end times and prophetically in the Old Testament especially. But, you know, let me get into this. You ready? Nikola Tesla had this really interesting flying machine design. You know, he talks about wanting to know or willing to express this idea that to understand the secrets of the universe, think in form of frequency and vibration.
Yep.
So do you think that there's a connection between the UAP language that is now being developed to kind of discredit and close the chapter of UFO acronym and all the identities that will come along with that? And do you think that they're trying to unroll some technology that has been veiled for quite some time, possibly things that were understood by Adolf?
They've been doing that since they were invented. Whatever they invented is already on the market. Well, maybe not the market, but it's a real thing.
Hitler, Nikola Tesla. Just let's pontificate on that for a minute here.
Yeah, I think we're closing in on catching up to the level of technology that was before the flood, just before the flood came. And I would speculate that the flood was to prevent a destruction by fire with the level of that technology that is reserved according to 2 Peter 3 for the end time. And so it was an intercession for a prevention to ensure all the names that were written in the book of life from before creation have the opportunity to leave those names in and not have them blotted out. We all are allotted that opportunity. So I think when we look at the technology that's before the flood, it increases relatively rapidly at the introduction of the giants in Genesis 6, which is the preamble to the flood story. Now, it's more than just a few years. I mean, it's 100 years from the introduction of Noah to the time when they go on to the ark. So you got at least 100 years there. But the giants are actually created before that last 100 years. So in the days of Jared, according to the book of Enoch, and also the days of Noah, according to the Bible, Noah lived 600 years before the flood. So you could push that back to a more relative date to see our rapid climb of knowledge and technology. And that you could make that as an interesting parallel where you have this knowledge that is the heart to understanding the flood story, even DNA technology, because the whole earth was corrupted and all flesh was corrupted. And that's the Hebrew word shakath, which means to pervert, to ruin, to destroy, to decay, words like that. And that would then imply flesh and all the earth. That implies all of the animals and the plant genomes as well. Well, we're reaching that capability today, but we're not quite there yet. So this angelic technology likely would have included all sorts of things we're just starting to get a glimpse at as we start to ramp up here. So when you have wave and sound and vibration technology that we're trying to grapple with, that likely was commonly understood both before the flood and maybe again shortly again after the flood, I think we're going to see more of this type of technology. And we should be aware that there is technology described like that biblically with in the time of the Exodus and the time of the destruction.
Yeah, technology doesn't go backwards. If they've invented that, whatever they've invented, it just gets better. It's like they don't make something and then get rid of it and not use it.
Of Jericho, where
Absolutely.
where you have music, which is working on the same kinds of principles. It's
Correct.
part of the 7 liberal arts and ancient sacred sciences that has a whole different technology that's applied with music and its vibrations and its notes and all the other mathematical implications that would go with it. But to be able to have, along with the Ark of the Covenant, that's probably also working to enhance whatever is going to work with the trumpets, but to have the whole city crumble is seemingly a vibration technology that is somehow able to be tapped into within this world. We just haven't quite found that knowledge, or if they haven't shown it to us yet. So I think that type of technology is coming back.
I think that's more than likely. They've already invented it.
And, we're talking about, the ability to change weather. And, in 2019, the former CIA agent was talking about having the ability to have a link for people on this if they want. I can't post it on social media in Canada because Facebook takes it down because it's like news. It's off a news station. But Brennan is giving the speech that they have this ability with the technology to change weather patterns in any place that they want to do it. And it's quite controversial because of the nations that we would use it on and what the reaction might be to that technology. And yet, and so I take it at face value that they have that technology. Because it was said,
Gary,
publicly.
Let me jump in here real quick because I broadcasted on this and we talked about these weather modification patents and abilities. But one of the things me and you have dived into over the years is the elementals. I've done some broadcasts with Dan Duvall and with you, and that's not widely covered or understood. Actually, it's not compartmentalized well among the people, right? That means the people that are actually learning about this. So all of this stuff is elemental. Let's just be honest. God works through many elementals. The spirits, the angels are operating through elemental. Weather patents, do you think that honestly, they would have had to have figured out, Gary, how to communicate and almost order elemental entities to have a weather, because a lot of the times we're too modern. Like we think there's some sacred secular divide between like technology and a computer processing chip versus the earth, but it's made from the Earths. NASA Dave, good friend of mine, 12 years tenure at NASA, did all these amazing things there. He was a poster child. He's been on many times, and we're talking about the Earths, the earth. It's just sand, and it's different gold and materials. So with all of these patents and these manipulations of the physical realm, you would have to think there's almost like a sigil or some type of magic with a K, sorcery markings, if you will, where they are integrating and manipulating the physical realm through the elementals.
Yeah. And so if we look at the rebellious hierarchy, the invisible ones, and we look at some of the main gods, they're associated with controlling weather. So like Baal, for example, is a storm god, right? And so in the book of Enoch, we get angels associated with weather as well. Again, not biblical, but certainly is a possibility. And so I think when we look at the word elemental as well, you can get that broken down into the basic as it's defined. Stoichian is the Greek word that's used in the New Testament. It can mean the basic element of the universe as a physical element, and it's used that way, right?
Almost
But,
like plasma, almost like we would consider plasma. Would you say?
yeah, whatever the principal lowest
Mhm.
common denominator of the physical element is, then that's what it's defining itself as. But it's also described in the book of Galatians and in Colossians to entities that enslave us in this world. So when we look at that translation as elemental in Galatians, it is, we have to sort of take a step back and say, well, this cannot be that basic element because their inanimate objects can't enslave us, right? But they can be used to enslave us, but it's these elementals that are enslaving us, and they're called rudiments in Colossians. It's the same word, stoichian. And this is all being taught in relationship in both passages with principles, authorities, and fallen angels, right? So there's a relationship here as part of the hierarchy that is trying to enslave us. And it's also partially where subtitle of book 1 comes from, how secret societies and the descendants of giants plan to enslave humankind. So there was a sort of a deeper sort of play on that one if people wanted to try and get there. And so elementals are these beings that fit in the visible hierarchy. It doesn't mean that there can't be some of the demonic spirits as well if they've lost their oikoteri and their soul and their body as a disembodied giant was, but they're at the bottom of the visible hierarchy in the occult. And so they are a physical being that were created, and they're lower than the giants in their understanding in the hierarchy, that they were created to do specific things within the hierarchy. And so, for example, you might have the dwarves that are the ugly elementals. They were created to create the weapons for the demigods and work on certain technologies and things for the gods. And so in the Lord of the Rings, where you see these dwarves as part of that hierarchical structure, they're working in mountains creating these weapons, right? So there are 4 groups of elementals in the occult, and they're associated with the basic elements of the world, which they would put as, fire, earth, wind, I think, and water is the other one. And so there are 3 groups of elementals that are little ones, and then there's a 4th one that is reptilian and larger than humans, and they're called salamanders.
Yep.
And in the occult, they're the ones that live in the earth or in another dimension, but they're distinct again from the giants, not as high as the giants. So there's one group, and I document this group in book 1, that there's a group that comes through portals, another doctrine of the occult, just as Baal would go back and forth between his kingdom every day through the gateway or the cave to Hades at the foot of Mount Hermon, where the Council of the Gods was located and the Baalim Council was located. And that these are portals that are understood around the world as dolmens, D-O-L-M-E-N, sometimes called fairy dolmens, and they're kind of like a mini Stonehenge thing. You have 2 stone pillars and then a cross piece on it. So when you look at Stonehenge, that's got like at least a dozen or more portals in it, maybe more. I haven't counted how many of those are in there. And there's an interdimensional, all part of the wheel sort of worship concept of the giants and the elementals. So, so just let me sort of finish on this one point. I'll finish it quickly. I know I got down a rabbit hole there. And so there's one group that flies these UAPs or UFOs through these fairy dolmens, who are in charge of genealogies and technology of the giants and the visible ones that report to the invisible ones, and these are called gnomes. And these individuals come through and they kidnap people and they do sexual experimentations on them and they come back with no memory. And it's been happening throughout our history. So I give one that's like, I think 150 years old and one that's over 400 years old in book one. And these are called the gray gnomes. And their description is identical to the grays
Exactly.
in the UFO. So I think we're not seeing intergalactic visitations. I think we're seeing interdimensional because it fits with the deception and the control of this world by the polytheist forces.
So, Gary, it sounds like technology that mankind is using with nothing being new under the sun is literally us interfacing with behind the veil operations. Because, you mentioned dolmens. I did a pretty interesting episode with Derek Gilbert talking about them. And, he talks about them being recognized as funerary monuments, and then I had this connection that I brought up with him. I want to just share with you the connection between dolmens and gravestones. And we know the occult uses the human skull as like a medium and intercessor. Well, gravestones got heavily introduced after World War I and II, made of similar, if not the same material, limestones. Literally crystalline structures that admit and it can store information, broadcast and receive information. So I think it's really interesting. All of this does fit together in the most provocative way. Now I want to go down the route, technology, AI technology, nothing new being under the sun. So all of this fits together in my mind. Let's flesh it out a little bit for the audience, right? I don't need any more convincing, but you're saying stuff and I'm like, talk about going down rabbit trails. I'll take us down too many if you let me talk for too long too. So I'm going to pass it back to you, but let's talk about AI tech, what we're seeing unfold right now, real time, and where some of those correlations might be through elemental, through, these occultic languages that are expressed throughout the ages. I mean, let's make some connections here.
Sure. So let's begin again with that sort of days of Noah. Nothing is new under the sun. So in the days of Noah, both before and after the flood, you had not only giants, but whatever other spurious offspring the fallen angels would have created that were amongst us. And you had the parent gods walking amongst us with the offspring gods before the flood. Then after the parent gods are sent to the pit prison, we have the offspring gods that rule after the flood. So just to sort of make clear what I'm talking about there is that in the Bible we have the Canaanite pantheon, which most Christians are familiar with. So you would have Baal, who's an offspring god, son of El, who rules before the flood. So El is ruling with Ashtaroth as his consort, and Baal after is ruling with Anat. So as we understand that is we have references in the Bible to mostly the offspring gods, even though they talk about gods before the flood as well. And that's kind of the separation and helps you to sort of understand it. So Baal is the one going back and forth between Hades, Sheol, Otherworld, all the different names, and Earth at Mount Hermon that we're talking about. So expect that this is going to be like the days of Noah again. Whether or not they're sold to us as fallen angels or just more highly advanced aliens, we'll have to wait and see how they come out with that. But it's this technology that they had that had the ability to take the violence of the giants to a planet destroying capability through fire that we're just now sort of getting into, along with the other sort of technologies. Now, when we talk about going to Hades or Sheol, biblically, we would sort of understand that as being in the earth. But they're using this portal to get there. So it is more suggesting that it's in the earth, but in another dimension on a different wavelength, which again goes back to that sort of, now we're into quantum technology that has the ability to go interdimensional. And that's where things start to get very, very sort of interesting, that all the technology now that's being developed needs to be a digital technology and converted to the basic elements of the world and to be able to work with that in any dimension to make whatever alterations and or building blocks going forward. And this quantum technology is a technology that has to have very advanced AI to be effective, because sort of in a very simple term for people to understand is going interdimensionally with quantum computing is like shooting a rifle. So you can go to a specific spot in a very large area, but it doesn't cover a whole large area. So you need AI to be more like a highly advanced shotgun that can search millions and millions and billions as the technology gets more locations and things in multiple universes at the same time. So there, if you now go back to last year in January at the Davos meeting, they're very upset because they can't move forward on their agenda as fast as they would like to introduce the chip system and high technology through neural links and other things, because AI is not developed to the level that's required. So their marching orders is double down and get this thing done because you're killing our agenda. And so AI is merging with quantum. AI and quantum is merging with cryptocurrency. And that is becoming an interdimensional system. And one of the things that they also have to be able to do is understand that the bloodlines who rule this world as part of the invisible hierarchy answering to the invisible ones, who will become more visible as we get closer to the last 7 years, they do not want to lose the money that they control this world with. And all of their money today that is generally off the books, stored in Switzerland, and probably some other places, because they wouldn't keep it all in one spot. But the main place is Switzerland that they created it for. And it's a massive amount of money that they can always draw on and won't run out of. But if you convert everything now to cryptocurrency, you're into geomancy, which is part of the whole understanding of that as well. But you could decode things from another dimension unless they can seal up that back door to protect their assets. And that's part of what they're also working for. But they want a complete system that can work within this world, outside of this world, and do anything that they want. And they want to be able to do that through quantum entanglement. And one of the things that they need to do to trap that access to quantum entanglement is to find a specific particle. And now that brings up CERN. And CERN, they have all these superficial things. It's like a secret society there where, what they show you, what they do isn't what they really do underneath. It's more for show. And it seems to me that they're searching for what they call the Atma, or the Atman particle. And what that is, it's also known as the Brahman in the Vedas. And so what that is a particle you cannot measure in another dimension and at the quantum level. It's invisible.
Mm-hmm.
But their belief system, it's there from the ancient knowledge they have of their ancient texts. And this Atma particle contains all the knowledge of the universe. And what it does is it merges with a particle you can measure at the quantum level, and through that quantum entanglement provides its energy to send all information instantaneously in all universes, all dimensions at the same time, continuously. So this is designed to tap into that, to give one of those key things for people to take the mark of the beast, because this is going to be the mark of the beast system as it's developing. And it is designed to provide immortality. And that the other thing, and I'll get back to the immortality, but also to be a god, you have to have unlimited knowledge. You have to have access to this. And that knowledge provides you the capability to provide immortality through replacement parts, clones, whatever things at their DNA manipulation at the building block level, whatever they're going to be able to try and promise for you to take that mark of the beast. So when we look at this kind of technology and some of the things that are starting to roll forward, we have this like Neuralink, so the hive mind thing that they're after. You have this digital bed that they're trying to do for the hospitals, which is kind of like that science fiction sarcophagi technology where you can heal. So, but
Quantum med beds, I think.
Yeah.
they call them.
quantum med beds, and so this is going to work in multiple dimensions in an implant type of system to give you safety from diseases, make you more healthy, to give you immortality or to heal you right from the quantum building blocks forward. This is on the low side of the technology is messaging technology that a certain disease prevention mechanism that we went through in the last pestilence is designed on, but that will get replaced through a complete digital application going forward. And so all of that is being developed in parallel technological lanes that are starting to merge into a nexus point. But it's not there yet. It's not quite yet there, but you can see all the different avenues. And now we see things like, AI has to be developed. And then we've got people like Elon Musk is saying, well, but the Google AI is evil. So my solution is I'm going to create good AI. There's no such thing. And I get the motivation that, this is a technology that is existential. And you don't want it used on you, but the result is still the same thing. And whether or not it's a white hat in polytheism or a dark hat, and the white hats may say they have the better interest of humankind at heart, they still worship the pantheon of gods. They still want to destroy us and prevent us from reaching the resurrection and to be resurrected to be like angels. So they're trying to destroy as many of us as they can.
Do you think that the Ubermen, tapping into this limitless quantum field that you're talking about, that kind of is like the laminin or the rebar, right? Like it holds the infrastructure together through this multi-dimensional reality. That's just interesting. So I won't beat the dead horse. You did really well on that. Foglets, Gary. Do you know what a fogler or foglet is?
No.
So let me see if I can share my screen really quick with you and the audience for those of you who are watching this on Spotify. There we go. So these are foglets. They're like these creepy. Can you see that pretty well there?
Yep, I can.
Okay. So foglets here, also known as utility fog, are these little guys, Gary. And this is the stuff me and Dr. Monzo have been talking about. Dr. Monzo did the Aleph Tab body system, talks about the Hebrew signatures on the human body.
Yep.
And these guys are being well documented through different scientific, let's just say off the beaten path scientific processes. But dude, I'm doing this research with Monzo and I get into these foglers, and they're ancient Polish myth lore, and they show up in a cloud. They always have a foggy cloud around them. And I'm like, this is crazy stuff. So this to me is like a merging point, Gary, of technology, this elemental idea. I have right here an AI overview. Here's AI's response. The concept of elementals, there's often a connection drawn between spirits representing the raw force of nature and technology, which is seen as a way to harness and manipulate those forces.
Yes.
So it's right here in front of our face. Now, do you think that the powers that be, that the white hats and black hats, are as aware and operating in real time to keep, manipulate the information
Have you got
to
a
keep
drink?
us from,
No,
getting
I
to the
haven't.
resurrection, as you had just mentioned a couple minutes ago? Or do you
I
think that
had
they're
that.
even
That's
catching up
ginger beer.
with,
Oh, I thought it was
what's going on here?
I'll just bring
Sweet.
you a little
They
cup.
have a
no, I thought it was a
problem
sweet one.
understanding how good the actors would be
tablets?
if this is
Do you
true.
know
Oh,
your drink?
yeah.
I
You
feel that there's some
haven't.
goodness
No,
left in
that-
humanity,
You
but I don't
poured
know
them
how
into
many
it, but left it
I
in
can
here.
say that for.
Yeah. Well, I think that the bloodlines and the people who are running things today,
Tablet. Drop one.
I know. I would have put you
They're-
there.
genes have been and bloodlines have been diluted.
Do you need a
The
drink?
knowledge, a lot of it was lost, and they've been attempting to recover it ever since.
Do you need a drink?
And
No, I just
for
said,
whatever reasons, and it's
Got one.
got to be through
Got
whatever rules and regulations
A
that
drink.
got us set down
Talking
for
about.
this period up until we get closer to the end time, is that the rules of engagement of these beings, these elementals, and other groups, has restrictions to a certain degree. And so that is part of the whole process, and to slow down the march to that rendezvous with destiny that they want to have to destroy this world by fire. And if people aren't familiar with 2 Peter 3 again, this is one of the sort of Rosetta Stone's prophecies, and it's kind of like a dual prophecy, as I outline in book 2, where it gives you important information and it says, and it starts about this world in the beginning. Well, in the beginning is Genesis 1, right? And it's talking about this world that was in the water and out of the water that was destroyed by fire and perished. Well, that's not the flood, because the whole earth didn't perish at the time of the flood.
All flesh was destroyed.
Yeah, and everything in the sea was still alive. So the planet wasn't destroyed, didn't die.
Interesting.
And that's in those words in the beginning is the same words, just coming up to the Greek for Genesis 1:1. And so let's just imagine, just for a second, to let the audience play off that, if you look at the word was in Genesis 1:2, where it says the earth was void and without form, that word is haya in Hebrew, and it can be translated as was, but it can also be translated as became. And Toho and Bohu for void and formless suggest it was ruined, became that way, destroyed, not created, empty and unlivable. And in Isaiah 45, where God doesn't create anything in vain, Tuhu again, because he creates everything for the world to be lived in, he wouldn't create anything incomplete. And there's other passages, but just to do the quick thing here to get to where I'm going,
come on.
is that now if the world somehow became destroyed, and then link in Psalms 104, where it has some more details about the creation of angels and other creation information, it has an interesting thing where you have, when God sends his Holy Spirit, the earth is renewed. Guess who's there in Genesis 1:2? Holy Spirit's hovering over the chaos.
Yes.
Now, if
Yes.
you destroyed the world by fire, because this is the destruction in the beginning of fire that's reserved for the end time, because nothing new is under the sun, right? Now, if you destroy the world with angelic technology by fire, probably a good location for the angelic rebellion between Genesis 1 and 1:2, as I build on this premise, then the world was destroyed down to its foundations, as other passages talk about, like in the book of Job and elsewhere. You have something that likely happens is that the firmament collapses and becomes into chaos. And so now if you have that going on, and you wanted to, after Genesis 1:2, to restart, you're going to have to do the basic things over on the renewal process. And one of those things is going to be separate the waters below from the waters above to recreate life. Because the firmament would have collapsed. And that's the earth that was in the water, that's out of the water, that's being talked about in 2 Peter. And so this destruction by fire that may have happened, because this is all sort of theory, but you can back it up all biblically in the original languages as well.
Hey, Jason, welcome to the channel.
Destruction that destroyed the world by fire, that since the creation of the Adamites, they've been trying to do again.
Oh my gosh. Dude, Gary, this is wild. I have so many things going through my head. The memoir region, Dr. Monza's research shows on the chest there. This is said to be, pretty relevant, even though we don't have too many well-documented cases on human abductions and survivors. But when they do, this region gets removed right above the nipple on the chest. They call that, well, Dr. Monza's research shows it's the memoir region in Hebrew, which is for the dual waters and also reproduction. And like you're saying this stuff, and like I have all this other stuff going through my head, kind of pairing it together, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. So the fire at the end, it's almost like, the reproduction or the seed, the seed war, that which, the wheat and the tares, however you want to think about this, but the images at the end that are not complete, they're not whole. Be holy as God is holy, he says. It means to be complete, be whole. And that's all multi-layered too. But it just takes me back to how interesting this day and age that we live in right now is.
Yeah, and now think about,
Oh my gosh.
as we talk about this as being relative to prophecy. So
Yes.
what is the punishment for the fallen angels, the demons, and those who take the mark of the beast? And you might even make an allowance, and this is just speculation, that there'd be other people that would be, throughout our history, would be just as, yeah, they're going to the lake of fire, not
Yes.
for the second death, but for eternal punishment. So think
Yes.
about how God and the laws that he set down in this physical world, an eye for an eye, equal justice, right? For those who wanted to destroy the world by fire, they will be tortured by that fire for eternity.
Okay, so where does it say that in the Old Testament somewhere that he who destroys the image of God in himself will be destroyed? Paraphrasing, it's in there somewhere. It's just talking about, kind of the same concept, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So
It
being in
just
Christ
shows
Jesus.
you how the Bible works in perfection if you
Correct.
just permit it.
Yeah, if you let it take you where it wants you to go. Superlative, Gary. You're freaking me out, man, because I'm just having too many connections back to back. I don't even know if I'm making sense to myself at this point. Handed it back to you. Where would we go from here to continue to, make this solidified within the minds of the listeners, and even tie some loose ends with this whole technology, elemental, and prophecy? I mean, where do we go?
Yeah, so this technology has to be in place so that they can deceive the world to make a stand against the God of the Bible. Right? Because if there's no chance on defeating this evil God of the Bible, why would people do that? So they have to create the scenario and the plausibility so that people will do that. So they have to develop this knowledge. And in that, in terms of people are saying, we want to do this for freedom, but it's actually going to destroy the earth by fire. And if Jesus doesn't step in at the time of Armageddon, all flesh will be
Thanks,
killed by
Jason.
fire.
The twinkling of an eye, we will be transfigured in the twinkling of an eye, and we will see him as he is at his coming.
Yeah.
Where does that fit in? Is that twinkling of the eye process, whatever's taking place there? Because if I remember correctly, it's like the quickest measurement of time that's conceivable, the flash of light.
Instantaneously, essentially.
Instantaneous. Do you think that process is actually, I guess you could say it redoes the DNA? It brings us into that completion in Christ Jesus that keeps the destruction from fire from happening. I don't know if that even makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure the last part of the destruction by fire. I mean, it's a mystery. It
is.
So, but what we can do to understand that is that if we look at the crucifixion of Jesus, and he resurrects in his body, and then ascends back to heaven in his body, he has created something new in the world when he does that. Because humans, when you go back to heaven in a spirit form when you die until the time of your resurrection. And I know there's 3 exceptions with Enoch and possibly the disciple Jesus loved and Elijah. And maybe they were transformed in a similar kind of way to be in heaven, but the two witnesses, if they're part of it, they're going to suffer the first death. So that doesn't kind of make any sense. But with those as an exception in terms of not getting down the rabbit hole.
And as far as I know, the witnesses aren't here yet. If they are, they're being discreet.
Well, in this, if we now look at the body that Jesus is
And I don't think that's the two witnesses' jobs being like that.
coming back in again in that same physical body that can go interdimensionally, which can't be done today because we know angels can't do this. They have to create their own oiketerion, that they go from spirit form and into a physical form. So when we're resurrected, we're going to have new bodies. And they're bodies like Jesus. It is something new. And that's what we'll be transformed into so that we can do it. And then people who are resurrected into those new bodies as well, whichever resurrection for eternity that you're part of. If you're for the judgment, you may not have that eternal body given to you. You might be going to the second death, but that's for God to decide, not me. So, yeah, I think in that twinkling of the eye, I mean, it's just so utterly out of the norms of physical understanding that we have. It's mind-boggling, but we should not be surprised at something that spectacular, because when God provides a sign, it's something that's out of
Jason,
the
we're all
laws of
devout
the
Christians
physical
here.
universe. Whereas things that are used by polytheists, they're either contrived, they're fake, or they're using things that fall within the parameters of the laws of the universe. So when God, for example, creates 3 days of darkness in the days of the Exodus, that's outside the laws of the physical universe. Can't be duplicated. When God creates a star to hover over Bethlehem, that's outside the laws of the universe. They cannot, no matter what they do, recreate that. When God causes the sun to stand still, however he does that, it physically does, stays sunlight. That's outside the laws of the universe. What God does what Jesus does in the fulfillment of the harpazo prophecies and of the coming prophecies, and there's several different words, and really tell you the whole story as you take that back to the original Greek. But like erchomai, for example, is another one. But I won't go into Perusia. I won't go into all of the key words, but you have something that is going to happen that cannot be contemplated at the time, either before, if you're pre-trib, when Antichrist comes to power, or just as Antichrist is coming for power, if you are a mid-trib, or if you're more closer to the end, that's when it would happen. But wherever your timing is on that,
Bloody dog again.
It's such a hassle. Big vacuums on wheels are impossible to use for quick jobs, and professional detailing is time-consuming and expensive. But now, there's the AutoVac, the handheld vacuum for cars and trucks that make
When you can manage your energy usage and bills easily and securely on the MyENGIE app, everything becomes epic. With Engie, it's possible.
Jason, I stream the same time every day, so if you get bored or want to join in, you're always welcome.
잠을 보시고 365에 아주 미쳐버리겠다 정신 못 차리겠다 언제쯤 닿게 될까 I'm going to 365에 아주 미쳐버리겠다 우리 뒤에 걸어다녀 알아보면 크게 숙여 고맙긴 하지만 내 모습까지 사랑할 건 아니잖아 날 보지마 아니다 너가 했던 말이 떠올라 세상은 내가 보긴 하는 미나고 예쁘게 보라고 너가 그래서 나와 치웠다 그것도 넌 기억나 어제는 미웠다 오늘은 길었다 니는 굳이었다 아무튼 비뚤어질 건 너만큼 나는 너를 붙잡으며
What the hell is this?
이제는 너를 떠올리면 오히려 그게 더 뒷걸음치게 돼
Damn cat. I mean dog. The dog stepped in and changed the channel. Just
The
stepped up.
all-new KitchenAid
He stepped on the
Pure
remote.
Blender puts you in control.
Man, what happened? Gabe, can you check this out, please? That's what happens. It just drops out and does that.
Are you still online?
So look,
Just
it's not there. When that stops like that. Yay, finally. That's not it. Oh, there it is at the bottom. I have to hang it up. Okay, I'm rebooting, guys.